Hey guys, welcome to the Silver Report. Here we are, it's Wednesday, March 8th, 2017, and let's get right into some of the economic factors that will be playing a part into the price of precious metals. We have some serious developments taking place. 0% interest rates, they're hitting European banks hard right now. The German economy is doing well, but the country's banks are suffering due to zero rates. Commerzbank, the country's second largest bank after Deutsche Bank, announced declining results with its net profit collapsing from €1 billion in 2015 to €279 million in 2016. And Deutsche Bank announced a loss of $1.4 billion, due in part to several fines, but also, like Commerzbank, to low interest rates that made its turnover plunge 10% lower to €30 billion. Another country this is taking place in, for example, United Kingdom, has its largest bank, HSBC, announcing a drop of 82% in net profit. $2.48 billion in 2016 when it was making $13.52 billion in 2015. Notably due to lower rates. The pound sterling doesn't differ from the euro in this regard. In Europe, on average, 2/3 of the net turnover for banks come from margins on interest. So the difference between the rate charged to the customer and the rate at which the bank refinances itself, of course, with zero rates, this margin is being crushed. Even more so, since in most European countries, loans are made using variable rates. This, in turn, affects all other loans and lowers the margins. One exception is France, with fixed-rate loans, although they can be renegotiated, but few people do it. Thus, French banks are a little less hit by these low rates, and they still hold performing loans, which explains their relative good health. But if low of zero rates persist, they will also be hit for sure. 0% interest rates are hitting European banks at the core of their activity. So we must add that to their bad loans, especially in Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Cyprus. What should really worry us is that the banks in countries that are doing fine are not being spared right now. These declines in profits and threats on solvency are being masked by the European Central Bank, which lets banks have access to all the liquidity they need. Ever since the euro crisis in 2011, the ECB hasn't been shy with measures dedicated to bank refinancing, to which we must add its quantitative easing program, which was €80 billion per month. Starting in March, it's now down to €60 billion, but this is the level at which they are creating currency, which brings the banks even more liquidity. This policy brings abnormal growth to the ECB, and its balance sheet has ballooned to €3.66 trillion. That's the equivalent of 31.6% of the whole Eurozone's GDP. And how long can this go on? Germany, for instance, keeps criticizing the lax ECB policy and could lose patience. An accident could happen to an Italian bank or to Deutsche Bank. Political risks also must be taken into account. As, for example, the future Italian government that would announce its exit from the euro. Beppe Grillo's five-star movement is leading the polls right now. And so this explosion of the ECB's balance sheet only serves to hide Eurozone crisis for a while, but it's looming, and even banks in countries doing well will be hit. Nobody will be spared the fallout as a result of this development that is taking place in the Eurozone. So despite just the geopolitical tensions or the tensions of the sovereign movement that is rising worldwide, I mean, even in Canada, accepting the refugees, he should really learn to pay attention to the voting habits that took place in the United States, that people and the citizens are no longer happy with having their country given over to these globalist policies, no longer happy with their country being bankrupted by these central banks. They're no longer happy with business as usual. And there's good reason for that. because the collapse of these banks will affect the whole world. There will be carnage as a result of this collapse that is coming. 0% interest rates were something that was only in theory previous to the 2008 crisis. But now, as we see in the United States, we also see in Europe their attempt to try to influence banks to lend whenever it's not favorable for them has created this bubble. And it's also destroying these major banks. What was the reason for the 2008 crisis? It was defaults. It was failures on mortgages for subprime lenders, lenders that were not prime to lend money to. And so 0% interest rates creates this kind of a problem on a countrywide, Eurozone-wide, and worldwide basis. And so the results are the collapse of these banks. When you lend to people when you shouldn't, it results ineffably in a bubble. And bubbles always pop. All right, thank you guys for joining me here on the Silver Report. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe, like the videos, share the videos. I thank you guys all so much for stopping by. As always, stay safe.